prayer for a pandemic. May we, who are merely inconvenienced, remember those whose lives are at stake. May we, who have no risk factors, remember those most vulnerable. May we, who have the luxury of working from home, remember those who must choose between preserving their health or making their rent. May we, who have the flexibility to care for our children when their schools close, remember those who have no options. May we, who have to cancel our trips, remember those that have no place to go. May we, who are losing our margin money in the tumult of the economic markets, remember those who have no margin at all. May we, who settle in for a quarantine at home, remember those who have no home. During this time when we cannot physically wrap our arms around each other, let us yet find ways to be the loving embrace of God to our neighbors. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. And now, I never found out for sure, but is past President Rick doing the pledge today?
Yes.
Very good.
Please join me, fellow Lions, in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And now for our guest here today, we'll introduce our speakers later, but I'm going through my, oh, here we go. Past Assistant Governor Orlando, welcome. I see Cynthia Garcia from Upper Valley Lions Club has joined us. Welcome. Everybody else looks like is members here. Have I missed anybody? A guest? All right, I don't see anybody else, so we'll go on to our health and welfare. Does anybody have any reports for health and welfare today? Lamont, is Carolyn doing better?
Yes, she is. Much better.
Come on. And Lil and Jack, are you guys doing okay over there?
Okay.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. And I guess, Rick and Sharon, you had your shots this week, but you didn't get sick?
Just a little tired.
Very good.
Muted.
Glad you're all right. All right, then, our announcements. I was gonna, Mark, past President Mark, can you please give us an announcement regarding our elections?
Yes, Annette, did we have a pretty good turnout for voting?
Yes, I sent you an email this morning. We had 17 who voted, and everybody was voted in.
Okay, so let me go through it then. Thank you, Annette. I appreciate it. The following people that were duly elected. First of all, I'll start off with the director. Ernie Hernandez became a director. And Lamont Kane became a director. Our tail twister will again be Sandy Gibson. Our lion tamer, Carlos Kaplan. Our membership chair will be Mike Hicks. Our service chair will be Brian Carter. And our publicity chair will be Delirious Montañez. Secretary Treasury, Annette Norch. Our second vice president position is still open. Our first vice president will be me, Mark Omclove. And once again, our president will be Susan Driscoll.
All right. Thank you for everybody for signing up and agreeing to serve on the board. We really appreciate it.
Annette, does that include all of the absentee votes? Because I know Victor had an absentee vote and several of his friends.
Victor actually wrote it.
I hope you don't get mad if I did it on mail.
Very good, very good. We have so much nativity here. All right, Lion Carlos, would you like to introduce our speaker?
We are honored to have Stephanie Otero, who is the Vice President of Operations for the El Paso Community Foundation, and in addition is currently serving as the Interim Executive Director for the El Paso Children's Museum and Science Center. She moved to El Paso in 1998 and joined the staff of the foundation in 2011, where she primarily works on the foundation's educational and arts projects. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to share this project as it evolves with our community. So as I understand it, and Susan, please correct me, or Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to sort of give a presentation and then we'll open it up to questions.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So if you all will remember back to 2012, there was a quality of life bond project that had multitude of projects, but 3 signature projects. One of those signature projects was a children's museum. Fast forward 4 years to 2016, and for a variety of reasons, none of the 3 signature projects had moved forward. A few donors came to the El Paso Community Foundation and expressed their concerns and wants to move this project forward, as they saw it as one of the most important and impactful projects that was going to be done in El Paso. And so in meetings with the city, we formed a private-public partnership between the City of El Paso and the El Paso Community Foundation. The El Paso Community Foundation established a 501c3 EPC museum to run the museum, and we agreed to raise additional funds to make sure that this was a world-class, state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind museum for our community. In 2016, the foundation took the lead on a strategic master plan. We started with 32 public meetings. The Community Foundation is committed that this is a community project and we wanted community input throughout. We also launched an architect contest to select the architect that would design our new museum. And we did a search for a founding director. And the reason that I say that now is that our original founding director, Dr. Paul Courtnar, a few weeks before COVID hit, was stolen from El Paso by the Ontario Science Center, and I say that somewhat jokingly, in that our Ontario Science Center is the largest, most prestigious science center in the world, so we obviously did a really good job in our selection that that's who they wanted as well. And due to COVID, our search for a new director has been slow, as it's hard for people to move and change geographic locations at this time. But since I was part of the original team that did the strategic master planning, I very happily stepped up to fill this role until we can hire a new director, and the project has moved along with no hiccups. So the architect that we selected was Snøhetta, which if you look at their website, is based in Oslo, Norway. But what the awesome part is that one of the founding partners of Snøhetta is Elaine Molinar, who is a Coronado High School graduate. Her family still lives here in El Paso. This is she's an amazing person, went off to UT Austin, and her career just took off. And we're so happy that she could come back to her home community and design such a beautiful building. So this is a rendering of what the Museum Science Center will look like. We have a theme for the museum, Blue Sky, and I will share a little bit more about that later. But the building is supposed to represent a cloud. The whole bottom floor is glass, so the building looks like it's floating. And we have a beautiful public area to add to public space in our downtown El Paso, and we're super excited about this building. Carla's showing you a cross section now of the building. It's a 70,000 square foot building, 4 stories, and this kind of gives you a peek at what the building will look like. We'll get to see up close renderings of the exhibits in just a minute. The question that we hear the most is, when are we going to get to see this museum? Well, so we now are actively in construction. If you go to our website, you can look at a webcam that shows you what they're doing on any given day. We are expecting a fall 2022 opening. As I mentioned before, we started with 32 public meetings, and we've continued to meet with stakeholders throughout the process of building out the experience inside the museum. The theme for the museum is blue sky, and this is both figuratively and literal. You know, because you're all El Pasoans, that El Paso has beautiful blue skies 360 plus days a year, and the blue sky connects us all. In the case of the Lions Club, there is no division between the sky here and the sky, say, in Ireland, so the sky connects us all. And in science, blue sky thinking is thinking outside the box, being visionary, future thinking, thinking of things that are not possible now. And we hope that visitors, when they come to this museum, will leave with that sort of visionary, thinking outside the box, anything's possible attitude. The museum has 9 zones over the course of the 4 floors. On the first floor, we also have a gift shop, cafe, learning space, public space, and we're going to start with the first zone, which is the climber. So the iconic piece of the museum will be a 4-story, 60-foot amazing climber that has been designed explicitly for El Paso. In fact, every inch of this museum is unique. None of these are exhibits you can go anywhere else and experience. So when you begin on the first floor, we have some smaller experiences for our younger visitors, a shorter, smaller slide, climbing areas. And then as you come up through the climber, there's all these massive geographic shapes, cylinders and spheres that the kids will be able to climb and crawl and squeeze through as they climb and make their way to the top of the museum. There's also a set of stairs for caregivers who are not as adventuresome in their climbing. And at every step along the way, there are all kinds of ways for children with mobility challenges to engage with the climber. This museum has been designed to be as inclusive as it possibly can. And at the very tippy top of the 60-foot 4-story climber is something we call In the Clouds. And what's really cool is that integrated into In the Clouds is a wheelchair obstacle course where, again, children with mobility challenges will have the opportunity to engage at the very tippy top of a climber, which never happens. And we will have wheelchairs for those that are do not have mobility challenges, so that they can try to do the obstacle course and understand what it's like to live your life in a wheelchair, and hopefully gain some empathy. Also starting on the second floor is our exhibit, Big Skies. In our stakeholder meetings, we met with the K-12 population of teachers, and they said that one of the most difficult things to teach in El Paso is weather and energy. We are very lucky in El Paso. We do not have, I don't know if you all saw the horrible news this morning, tornadoes and hurricanes and blizzards and typhoons. And so kids here in El Paso don't get an opportunity to understand that, and then how the weather is harnessed for renewable energy. So this entire exhibit is about weather and energy. So as you come up the grand staircase that Snowhead has designed for us, the first thing is our weather casting. So kids are going to learn the science behind weather forecasting, but then they're going to get to have fun and pretend to be the forecasters. And it's even going to have wind and rain. So you know how, like, you see the reporters out there and their wind hair is glowing. So they're going to be able to record their own video forecasts with with simulated weather that we don't even have in El Paso, and save that. Each visitor will get an RFID bracelet so that all the things that they make and create in the museum, they can take with them. This is our sustainable city. It's a massive Lego table where kids are going to learn to be engineers. They're going to be able to design and build their buildings, but then they're going to get to test those buildings. What happens if an earthquake? So there'll be a shake table. There'll be ways to look at how you harness weather to light your building. So there'll be ways to harness wind and the sun to see if they can light up their buildings. Also in this space are areas for our youngest visitors. Although the quality of life bond was for a children's museum, it was clear in all our public meetings that the community wanted both a children's museum and science center. So what we've done is created this hybrid, which is best practice across the country. The Austin Children's Museum is now the Thinkery, a hybrid model. The San Antonio Children's Museum is now the Dooseum, a hybrid model. And the way we embraced it in our museum is that there is a dedicated area for our youngest visitors, but there's also a dedicated experience in each of the other zones for our earliest visitors. So this is our research vessel where kids can pretend to be captains and learn about how research vessels go out to study the weather and climate change and other things related to what happens in our oceans. And they get to have fun, and they'll get, there's a real radar detector, there's going to be compasses and globes and things so that they can navigate around the world. Also, for our younger visitors, on the back side of our weathercasting are ways that they can interact with temperature and the world and maps and understand how those, just the beginnings of understanding weather forecasting. And finally, in this area, and believe me, I'm trying to give you a whirlwind 20-minute tour, so we've tried to highlight specific experiences. There's far more experiences in every zone that I'm sharing, is our massive stars chart. NASA is giving us a map that has mapped 1 billion stars, and the kids are going to learn about how sailors used to navigate by the stars, constellations, the difference of constellations from country to country, and get to create their own constellations. We're going to now move up to the 3rd floor to Fly High. And this is a nod to the aerospace industry that is right in our backyard. And the whole exhibit is about flight and wind patterns and wind movement. And in the center of this exhibit is a flight testing place for paper airplanes. It was important to the museum that things that they learned in this museum they could take with them and still do without all the fancy equipment. Everybody can find a piece of paper pretty much, and so they can learn to build a paper airplane, test that airplane, and then take it home and show. The flight simulator will have a launch pad for their paper airplanes. It will have an obstacle course where hoops can be moved to try to get the paper airplanes to go through them. There'll be ways to create updrift, downdrift, and then of course our Franklin Mountains are at the end that they try to get their plane over and learn about all the pieces that affect flight as airplanes take off in our world today. There's an area in the back where they're going to design and build and test their airplanes, and we'll have smaller air columns for younger visitors to play with, to use smaller pieces until they're ready to launch their own airplanes. And then we have a giant wind wall where the kids are going to be able to manipulate small little discs to understand the movement in air and how just our own beings moving through our space every day moves the air in the room that we're in. Across from this exhibit is the dedicated area that I had mentioned before for our younger visitors. There's an area for birth to 3, which I'll go over in a minute, and this is our area 4 to 7-year-olds. This developmentally appropriate area is all about role play. Kids that are this age like to pretend to be things. And in traditional children's museums, you'll see a grocery store, a farmer's market, or maybe a little town where they pretend to be the police or the firemen. We decided to do something completely different and embrace animals. So the zone is divided into 2 areas, one where the child can become the animal and one where they can become a veterinarian and take care of the animal. So there's caverns and shadow play and puppetry and all kinds of fort building so that they can pretend and learn about the habitats, how animals move, how they communicate, what they eat, everything about animals. And on the other side, they can put on some lab coats and become veterinarians. I'm not sure you're aware, in El Paso region specifically, we have a huge shortage of veterinarians, and across this country we do as well. This is going to be a wonderful care lab where each of the stuffed animals will have RFID chips in them. So when they stick their animal, like the rabbit, in the MRI machine or the X-ray machine, it will be actual X-rays and MRIs of a rabbit and the heartbeat when they're in the caretaking, so that they'll get to see what those readouts look like for the particular animal that they are taking care of that day. We of course will allow children to bring their own stuffed animals to take care of as well in our beautiful museum. Directly adjacent is a secure area for our birth to 3. This will be for 3 and under only, a safe place where our rollers, crawlers, early walkers are safe from our running toddlers and running older children. But it's adjacent to that 4 to 7 area, so parents can have eyes on both their kids. This is called Desert Bloom, sort of a nod to the idea of the child blooms at this age. The cornerstone is a cacti programming space where caregivers can come to do programming with the museum. And on the outside of this barrel cactus are all kinds of sensory games and things that we worked with the Paso del Norte development therapists that were appropriate for kids. We have all these animal pathways where they can follow animal prints and start to learn how to navigate ramps and stairs and undulating floors to develop their gross motor skills. And then all along these pathways are also additional sensories to work on their fine motor skills. There's an area called the wobbly web where they can work on the balance, where there's a gentle give to that floor. And then of course we have an area for our babies, our rollers, that's protected, where moms can let early movers start to move around. And finally, one other thing we wanted to highlight in this space is a sensory sandscape. Kids are going to be able to play with topography and light and sand to learn about how our earth is made. We're going to now jump up to the 4th floor to making waves. This is all about sound frequencies and waves. And in the center of it is a giant coded marimba. Visitors will be able to learn basic coding skills, and when they finish their coding, it will actually code our giant sun marimba that you see, and we'll play for them. In all the meetings that we had with the community, pretty much everybody was on the same page about what they wanted to see in this museum, with the exception of one thing. We heard some people who said they wanted the museum to look like El Paso, and others that said, well, we already see El Paso, we want it to look like something else so kids get a view out into the rest of the world. So we challenged our exhibit designers gyroscope to do both. So throughout the museum, you'll see nods to El Paso, like our sun marimba for our sun city, but you'll also see things that allow kids to get a glimpse to other parts of the world and how other things happen. Throughout this sound gallery, it's a way to engage with sound. There's an echo chamber. There's a place where you can make your instruments. There is a place that you can lay down, and for children that have hearing loss, they can feel the beat so that they can feel the sound waves. Again, throughout this entire museum, we have opportunities to help kids with a variety of disabilities. We will actually have a sensory backpack that you can check out when you come into the museum. So if you have a child that's sensitive to light or sound, they can come to the museum any day and experience it. Typically, museums have an inclusive night, but that really isn't inclusive if it's one night a month. So we want to make it inclusive every day. We also have a media maker space. I don't know how much you all are aware, but the whole college application process is changing from sort of traditional written. Now online applications, it's going to move to digital portfolios. We want to create a space that high school students can come in after hours and create fantastic digital portfolios for their college applications. Also on the 4th floor is Challenge It. I'm not sure or not if you've heard the word makerspace. It's becoming sort of a standard term in these museums. It's usually places where you can work with laser cutters or 3D printers. We're going to kind of do a makerspace on steroids. So it's going to be a series of platforms where kids can develop and design and then test. So there'll be a code it table, a roll it table, a float it table, an edit table, really promoting the 4 cornerstones of the museum, which is collaboration, creativity, risk-taking, and perseverance. We want this to be a place where failure is not a bad word, but just means you haven't hit the right design yet. And we want to encourage kids to design, reflect, iterate, redesign, retest. And so we'll be announcing in the next few weeks some partnerships that are going to help program this space. There'll be a place where kids can build cars and test it. And then there'll be sensors on all of these tables so that the kids can collect data, analyze what they want to do to make their car faster, slower, sleeker, more streamlined, and then they'll be able to iterate those designs and retest their cars. And finally, on the 4th floor is our water exhibit. water, there's always a water exhibit in these museums, and because we live in the desert and we heard loud and clear from our community that water is a precious commodity and we need to teach that, we chose to do this exhibit also in our own unique way. So Gyroscope came up with the idea to take everyday uses of water. We take a shower every day, we wash our dishes, we wash our clothes, and blow them up to expose the science behind how we move water and how water is used in our everyday life into fantastical ways. So there's a giant shower head, a giant drain, a giant siphon, giant toilet, giant washing machine, giant dishwasher, and there'll be a ball system through this whole thing, so the kids, as they design their systems, can watch the colored balls go through the system and follow it to see how they did. We're going to have ice races where kids can make ice and then create obstacle courses and have their ice float down, sort of teaching the concept of the Rio Grande that we're hearing about in the news lately, and how the Rio Grande comes down to us and how and when do we get water. And of course, in the foreground, you see those yellow seats. That's our area for our youngest visitors. It'll be a protected area where caregivers can put their youngest visitors in a safe place to interact with water. On the second floor, there's an outdoor terrace for program space. There's also an outdoor terrace here up on the fourth floor, and this is our fantastical water garden made of pool noodles. So kids are going to learn about water systems and how you connect those systems. So there'll be water that's run into each of these bottom platforms, and then the kids can create fantastical sculptures that they can bring to life. And if their system is working, the sculpture will actually come to life because the water in it will make the sculpture move. And you see in the foreground those giant water droplets. We're going to have a water recycling plant, so we use the least amount of water to make this exhibit happen. And we're going to teach kids how that water recycling plant works, and they'll be able to look in and watch the water come in from the exhibits, go through the recycling plant, and come back out. Also on this terrace is the Float It table for Challenge It, and then a fun, playful water where the kids can jump water from one area to the other. Everything on this terrace is movable, so both this terrace and the second floor terrace will be available to utilize for events. So that is the quick whirlwind tour of our brand new Children's Museum Science Center in El Paso, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have about our beautiful museum. I think I see Mike's hand raised.
And we're going to get the presenter back to Annette now so that I can call on people for you. So Mike, back and go right ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Lauren Boss. I have actually a total of 3 questions. First 2 concern money. Number 1 is, where are you getting the money to build the museum? Number 2, and I think even more important, is where will you get the money to maintain the museum, maintenance of the exhibits, paying for the curators, staff, cleaning of the building, and utilities? And my last question has to do with everything you showed me is beautiful, wonderful, great. I can't wait till you build it. I want to go see it. But after a point, it may get a little stale. So are you going to have traveling exhibits and changing exhibits to keep the museum fresh? So thank you for taking all of my questions, and I look forward to your answers.
Sure, of course. I'm going to go backwards because I remember them in that order better for me. There is a multi-purpose room where we will have traveling exhibits that can rotate through. And for those of you who aren't aware of what a traveling exhibit is, some of the larger, more established museums create exhibits and then they put them on tour, just like an art collection goes on tour. So yes, Mike, we will have a space for traveling exhibits. The other piece is that we will have a capital sort of endowment that we'll establish so that we are told, and I am an interim director, I've never run a museum, I'm perfectly honest about that. Typical exhibits life is 7 to 10 years. So in the museum strategic plan, it is that those exhibits get updated. And we asked our exhibit designers when they designed each of these areas to make sure they were as flexible and that they created platforms of the basics plumbing, electricity, and things like that, that the exhibits can be refreshed, because you're absolutely right. Over time, they get tired, with the exception, of course, of the climber, which is a massive steel structure that will become sort of our iconic piece that might have updates in certain components, but the structure of the climber would remain. In terms of the money, those are important questions. So the private-public partnership allows us to combine public monies, which is the quality of life bond money that was voted on in 2012, with private monies raised. So we are responsible for, with our MOU of the city, to raise all the additional funds. We are going to begin our capital campaign announcements next week. So on Tuesday, right, Carla? Tuesday, watch the news, because we'll be making our first capital campaign announcement. I can tell you, of the $32 million that we're required to raise to make this happen, we're just about at the $27 million mark. And this summer, we'll be announcing a forward-facing fundraising campaign to help raise the final funds, and offering opportunities in a wide variety of ways for members of the community that want to help support this project to help us finish the last piece of the fundraising. But we've got a good amount of the money already in place and ready to go, which is how we're able to start construction. In terms of once we're operational, one of the things that was important to the city was that this was an accessible museum. So we do not want an exorbitant fee to come in this museum that would prevent, half the community from enjoying it. So we are going to save the city some money, because this will be the only museum not run by the city other than the Holocaust Museum. But they had originally budgeted to run the museum. So the city will cover 1/3 of the operating costs, and then the museum 501c3 and its board will be responsible through grants and donations to raise a portion of the money. We'll raise a portion through memberships. Children's museums and science centers across this country have, I think I'm going to use the right word, reciprocal memberships. So if you buy a membership because you're an El Paso resident, you can take that membership to other museums, but you charge a little bit more for that service to be able to do that. So we'll raise funds through there. We will also, one of the biggest revenue sources for a museum like this is actually rentals. And most people would think just birthday parties, but these have become the places for corporate retreats, for team building, after prom, after graduation parties, all kinds of other events. And so we'll have staff that will build out those revenue sources to make sure that we have a supported museum. And the purpose of the El Paso Community Foundation's role in this, once we get this thing built, is to build an endowment that we will manage for the museum to ensure lifelong financial health. I hope I have answered your questions to your satisfaction.
Okay, next we'll go to Rick Byrne and then Orlando.
Okay, my question is about a 10-part question.
Oh my goodness. You might have to give me a few parts at a time so I don't forget.
Based on what you said, you're probably going to have a marketing director to be able to generate revenue from corporates, retreats, schools, general public, and so forth. Are you going to be targeting people from as far as how many miles? Like, for example, SeaWorld targets people from 600 miles radius. So have you considered, like, you're going to be targeting what cities or what towns? How far are you going to be targeting? Because, the best show in town in El Paso is the zoo. So this venue is probably gonna be larger than the zoo as far as attendance. Well, that was the number one. That's the second question, right? Yes.
Orlando, my sincere apologies. My screen froze. So all I heard you say was attendance. Would you kindly re-ask your question?
Okay. Are you going to be having a marketing team? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And then this marketing team is going to be targeting people as far as how far outside of El Paso, like 500.
So there'll probably be a three-prong approach to our marketing. One would be our local community, the El Paso County, and we are actually already had meetings with the county to discuss opportunities that they could support transportation for those that live in the outer parts of our county. The second would be for schools and engaging in field trips and having kids come to the museum. And then third would be sort of our global approach of tourism, because of course, hopefully, and I'm sure that's what the city is hoping too, this museum will also act as an attraction for tourists coming into our town. And in fact, Carla is already receiving calls, because even though it says grand opening 2022, people see our name now and they call and ask if they can come to the museum. So we will have a three-part approach to that marketing. And yes, we have not hired, we're using an outside firm, Midoff Burton, right now to help us with some initial PR. And then, because we don't have a physical building, but we will have a marketing team, a development team, a full staff when we open.
And how far are you going to be targeting people to come to the museum? Like,
I hope across the whole globe.
well,
I mean, we will be focusing on, Albuquerque, Tucson, Phoenix, those areas. But ultimately, we hope to be a place. I mean, we don't have any definitive plans, but I'm hoping that our museum will be so fantastic that we get to host what's called ACM, which is the Association of Museums across this whole country, where everybody comes here to see our new museum.
okay. And my last question is, do you already have what the tentative entrance fee is going to be?
We haven't. What we have said is we're hoping it'll be in the $5 to $10 range, so that it is very accessible to as many people as we can. And then we are committed to finding creative ways to ensure that citizens who cannot afford that can still come to the museum. Paul Kortnar, who was the director, the founding director that we lost, did something very creative in North Carolina when he was there. He had memberships that were checkable. You could check out from the library. So you could check out a week membership from the library and come experience it. So we are, of course, open to any suggestions that you might have to make sure that we're as accessible to the community as we can. And that is definitely an important goal of the museum.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry that I froze in the middle of your question.
Where is it going to be located?
It is between the El Paso Art Museum and the El Paso History Museum. There was a Greyhound bus washing station that was still there, even though the Greyhound bus station itself had moved. And so that has now been cleared, and that's where it is. When you exit the Mills Garage, you face directly at the museum.
Cool.
Next to the train track, next to the train.
Yeah, and in fact, there's going to be experiences throughout the museum for kids with the sound and the approaching train to interact, and we're going to have a heat thing so they can see the tracks heat up before the train even comes in, that they can predict that the train's on its way in.
Cool.
Many of the buildings that are near those train tracks actually vibrate when the trains go through. Do you know, will the museum vibrate?
So there we have done, I cannot tell you the amount of studies with UP, and we even have sensors to monitor things during construction. Snowhetta knew about this. We are actually drilling piers 70 feet into the ground to minimize those vibrations. And they were able to speak to people who designed and built the ballpark and the garage next door to mitigate that. I don't think there's any way to make it 0%, but our building will vibrate much less than the others. And like I said, we're embracing our location. Kids love trains. And so we've built experiences to enjoy when the trains are going by our museum.
Will there be an entrance fee?
Yes.
Yes. So we'll have an inexpensive entrance fee for a single ticket. We will have memberships, and then we will have those memberships that give you access to museums around the United States.
Okay, cool.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
First of all, Stephanie, thank you for the great program. This is really exciting, about the whole project. I don't really have any questions. I have some quick comments. First of all, Bill Burton was a former member of this club, and my wife used to be his secretary when it was Midoff, actually, before Midoff Burton. My dad was Dr. Doyle Kern. He was a veterinarian. We lost him in '97, but he was a former member of this club and my sponsor. And I would tell you this, that he would have loved to see what you're doing with the veterinary component of this. He was a dedicated supporter of seeing students become veterinarians. He always did the pet merit badge with the Scouts, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, all of that. But he would have absolutely loved what you all are going to be doing with the profession component part of your exhibit. That is so cool. And one final thing, I want to be one of your students. I want to come in and see this museum, something fierce. This is going to be great.
Well, this museum is for all ages, birth to 100 or 110. So we hope you will all come when the doors open.
Definitely will. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Victor.
Oh, I have experience with a lot of speakers for many, many, many years. And I think I'd like to congratulate El Paso for hiring such a talented individual. She's well spoken, and she can relate to all of us in a very good sense of mentality for everybody. And I appreciate that very, very much. And I'm looking forward to contribute something to the El Paso Museum. Thank you.
Thank you, and you made my day. Thank you so much.
Very good. Annette, is your hand up? Okay. Okay. Jim Peak, go ahead. You have a question? Unmute yourself, please. Unmute.
This will be about Jim.
Jim, please unmute yourself.
Hello, Stephanie.
Yes.
This is Jim Peak again. I wanted you to know that I'm a retired professional fundraiser, and I've worked on campaigns all over the United States, and I've interviewed all the richest people in America. I've done campaigns in over 22 states, and I used to be the chief fundraiser at UTEP under 4 presidents. So if you just want to pick my brain sometimes, this might be Eric should have shared that with you.
I will tell him that.
But I also want you to know that you're already in competition with several other charities in El Paso. I constantly get phone calls from everybody about how to raise money and where to get the money. So you are going to have a lot of competition also. That's what I want to let you know. But
I appreciate that.
I would be happy to visit with you sometime if you would like to do that.
I would love to do that. I will have Carla reach out to you and set up a time for us to chat.
Okay, I see that Sandy has a question. Go ahead, Sandy, unmute yourself. And please mute Victor. I hear his sound. Thank you. Go ahead, Carla number 4, Sandy.
Oh, thank you. I have a question and a something for Orlando. Back to your question about tourists coming. We took a group to Indianapolis of senior citizens and took to the Children's Museum there, and they absolutely loved it. So tourism is definitely on the board. My question, Stephanie, is, and yes, it's a wonderful presentation, and I can hardly wait to see the museum. It sounds really exciting. My question is about safety for the kids when they're climbing on all those things.
Yes, so we actually have engaged a company called Studio Ludo, which is one of the top safety experts in the country. They're actually in New York City. And so they have sort of monitored the process of the design of the climber all the way through to give us suggestions and comments to ensure that it is safe. And then they will actually go to the workshop where the components of the climber are being built to check them. And then we will bring them into El Paso to check the climber when it's here. And they've given us all kinds of suggestions of where to make it feel really open. There's a lot of clear plexiglass that protects kids from falling, but makes it feel like it's super open to build that risk taking. And so, yes, we fully appreciate your concern of safety, and we have hired what I'm told is the best company in the country to check the safety of the climber. We also, just so you know, for fire, we had Arab, which is a top engineering company, design a special smoke evac system for our climber to ensure that in the very, very rare, unfortunate possibility of a fire, that all the kids can exit the climber safely.
Oh, thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
That I just thought. So is there a starting point in the museum? Do you work from top to bottom, bottom to top, or just go anywhere?
No, in fact, that is what we totally went the other way. We feel that kids often, you know, and all of us in our lives have rules and regulations and guidelines and boundaries. And although within safety and also within inclusivity, we have some of those things, the museum is a place of exploration that's supposed to, you know, spark discovery and ignite imagination. And so the museum is for you to discover how you want to do so.
And there are elevators, right?
There are 2 elevators, in fact, a large and a small elevator, and stairs.
And so how will you clean between, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sandy. I thought you were done.
No, I am. It just sounds wonderful.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Stephanie.
Well, I was wondering how you're going to clean for disinfecting with COVID in mind.
Sure. So we are actually lucky because while all the other museums in this country are having to retroactively put things in place to be able to clean now that we've had a pandemic, we get to learn from that and build some of these systems in because we're literally building from the ground up. So we've actually already met with several companies that are developing systems that were originally designed for hospitals that are now going to be used in everyday life. Planes are taking advantage of some of these technologies. Museums are going to take, schools, libraries. And so we actually have consultants on board to help us. In a non-COVID or pre-COVID, I guess that's how we all talk now, museums typically cleaned overnight. We actually have 3 sets of everything the kids use. So there's 1 set being cleaned, 1 set ready to go, and 1 set being used. We have industrial, commercial wash machines and dryers, dishwashers. This special, and I can't remember the name of it. It heats up things to a level that it kills everything. In addition to that, we will probably have these new robots that they're building that get turned on, and they with ultraviolet lights. And I will confess fully, I don't completely understand the science behind all of it, but apparently hospitals have always used these, but they light up to get rid of the bacteria. So we actually are lucky, unfortunately, on the backs of museums that are having to learn this on the fly.
Very good. I see Mike Badkin, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Stephanie, I have a comment on something that you mentioned. You said you're going to be targeting visitors from the Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, and that makes a great deal of geographic sense. But I would like to suggest, maybe you've already thought of this, that you advertise in the Texas publications that are sent out to potential tourists. It always concerns me when I receive advertising to visit Texas and I don't see things in there from El Paso. I'm certain people in Midland, Odessa, San Antonio, and lots of other places in Texas can get here just as well as people from Phoenix and Tucson.
Point well taken, and you're right. You're absolutely right. El Paso gets forgotten a lot. We will make sure that we are part of all of that. And like I said to Orlando, you know, our dream is that we become a place that people want to come from all over the United States and beyond because we're just that great.
$39 on Southwest Airlines. You can come from anywhere in Texas.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's a great comment.
I just wanted to recognize Carla as well. She has been, she's from the El Paso Museum also. I don't know, you want to give us a few words, Carla, about what you do there?
Lion Boss?
Yeah,
All
hello.
right.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Carla Salazar, and I'm the Director of Operations. And I just want to add something that I don't know if you guys are going to be excited about this or not, but the museum is going to be fully bilingual. We're working very, very hard to make the museum fully bicultural and bilingual. And that way we can make everybody really feel inclusive, but because our community, a lot of people will only speak Spanish, and we don't want them to feel that they cannot enjoy the opportunities of learning and activities that the museum is going to have. So yeah, we partnered with UTEP at one point to learn about the community, and now we're working on making the museum fully bicultural and bilingual.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today to help out Stephanie with her presentation. And Victor, you said you had a question, Victor?
Yeah, I was gonna mention this, that I would like to tell my kid that I was more than glad to go to his house and translate all this, what she said, because sometimes he forgets what his name is. That's all.
Oh, yes, yes. And PDG Orlando, you had a question?
Yes, I have one question. And in case that the tail twister tries to find me, here's my dollar. Okay, here goes my question. You're going to be targeting people, Spanish speakers that are not necessarily English speakers, that maybe don't understand English, but they're going to be users of the museum. And then you're going to be targeting people of different segments of the market on the US side. Okay. I'm the president of Best Media Advertising. According to El Paso Inc., it's the #1 agency in El Paso. If you do need some help, call me.
Thank you so much. And I should mention that we will also be working with Wattis. We are keeping this a secret. Even the board has not seen pictures, but there will be an exhibit on the first floor that will have a mirrored exhibit in La Rodadora, which is our sister museum in Wattis. And it will not just simply be a portal that the kids can wave hello to each other. It will be an interactive exhibit where the kids can really interact with each other in science on both sides of the border.
Fantastic. It sounds like you have done everything possible to make this the best museum possible, and we really appreciate it. It was a very interesting presentation. We learned a lot. Thank you so much. And so we have a little certificate of appreciation. We want to say thank you. We'll be mailing it to you, and so we appreciate your time and all your information. So please come back to our meeting sometime. You might be interested in some of the other speakers that we have, just like you, on the same caliber as you. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, and I hope everyone has a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have
Thank
a
you
couple
so
things.
much.
Thank you. I have a couple of things I need to talk to the board about. If you could just stay for 2 minutes after the meeting, I appreciate it very much. If you just give me 2 minutes. So if we'll call the meeting to an end now.